Professor Thern Kor set the resin cast on the center table with both hands. It was nearly twice the length of his palm, pale gray, rough around the edges, with a narrow heel and 5 deep marks at the front. Under the lecture chamber lights, those marks looked like claws. 200 officer cadets stared down at it from the curved rows of the threat ecology chamber. Kor let them look. Then he touched the control on his wrist. Behind him, a 12-meter projection filled the wall. Unidentified bipedal apex, Morrow Reach survey incident. A low murmur moved through the chamber. Most of the cadets had heard of Morrow Reach. Few had seen the original evidence. Kor folded his hands behind his back. Every inexperienced field officer makes the same mistake, he said. They imagine a dangerous animal announces itself. A photograph appeared beside him. Dense black trees, broken stone, fog packed between the trunks. You expect teeth, a roar, movement, something dramatic enough to tell you that the situation has changed. The next image showed a campsite surrounded by tiny numbered markers. What you should fear is the thing that has already changed the situation before you notice it exists. The room went quiet. Kor walked slowly around the table. 31 years ago, a survey vessel came down in Morrow Reach following a navigation failure. 9 researchers survived the landing. Another touch. A damaged alien craft appeared on the wall. Its hull had been split along one side. Communications were destroyed. Atmospheric interference prevented orbital contact. Rescue was estimated at 5 standard days. A Serev cadet near the front raised his hand. Kor nodded. Cadet Vestal. Professor, was Morrow Reach already classified as a Deathworld? No. That earned a few surprised looks. Kor smiled without humor. It became one. A few cadets leaned forward. Morrow Reach was considered environmentally severe but manageable. High terrain variation, aggressive megafauna, extreme temperature shifts, nothing outside known survival parameters. He looked at the footprint cast. Then the survey team began finding these. The wall filled with photographs. Tracks in mud. Tracks in ash. Tracks along a frozen stream. The same narrow heel. The same 5 deep forward marks. Bipedal, Kor said. Approximately 1.7 to 1.9 meters in height based on stride. Light enough to move quietly. Heavy enough to leave clear impressions in wet ground. A cadet near the center frowned. Only one. No. Kor changed the image. 6 sets of tracks crossed one another. At least 7. Several cadets shifted. One creature can be dangerous, Kor continued. 7 creatures acting independently can be worse. 7 creatures acting together become something else entirely. His eyes moved over the room. Coordination is what transforms a hunter into a strategic threat. In the back row, Cadet Iris Calder looked down at the footprint cast. She had been watching it since the moment Kor placed it on the table. Not the projection. Not the professor. The cast. Her mouth had tightened at one corner. Kor noticed. He continued. The first tracks appeared 11 hours after the crash. No direct contact followed. The survey team assumed the creatures had moved through the area earlier. The next photograph showed a torn ration container beside a tree. Then supplies began disappearing. A whisper moved through the cadets. Not much, never enough to cripple the expedition. A protein packet, water containers, waste sacks, small things. Vestal raised his hand again. They were testing the camp. That was our conclusion. Ours? Kor stopped. The question had come from the back. Iris Calder. Several heads turned toward her. Kor looked at her for a moment. Yes, he said, our. The chamber settled. Core faced the cadets. I was on that expedition. Now the silence became complete. He had taught the Morrow Reach case for 11 years. He rarely began with that detail. It changed the way students listened. Some saw him as more credible. Some stopped thinking like analysts and started treating the lecture as a survivor's story. Core preferred them analytical first. Vestal stared. You were one of the 9. I was the junior biological survey specialist. Core tapped the image of the damaged campsite. I was 26 years old, very well educated, and completely certain that education had prepared me for reality. A few cadets smiled. Core did not. It had not. He changed the projection. A night recording appeared. Most of it was darkness. Trees. Wind. A small fire. Then something moved behind the trunks. The figure appeared for less than a second. Thin. Upright. Vast. The recording froze. There. A red outline traced the silhouette. Unknown biped, designation 4. Core zoomed in. The image broke into grain. It circled the camp for 3 hours. A cadet whispered 3 hours. Minimum. How close? Within 40 meters. A nervous laugh came from somewhere on the left. Core looked toward it. The laugh stopped. Nothing about that night was amusing. He started the recording again. Wind hissed through the old microphone. Then a faint sound came from the trees. 2 short whistles. A pause. 1 longer note. Core stopped the recording. We heard that sequence 6 times over 4 nights. Communication, Vess asked. We believed so. Between the pack. Yes. Core enlarged a map. Red dots surrounded a line representing the survey team's route. Whenever we moved, they moved. If we turned north, they appeared north. If we changed elevation, tracks appeared above and below us. We never saw all 7 together. Another cadet raised her hand. Professor, if they were tracking you that effectively, why did they never attack? Core nodded. The question that troubled every researcher who later reviewed the incident. He gestured toward the cast. Predators do not always strike immediately. Some species test prey for weakness. Some separate groups. Some wait for injury, exhaustion, or unfavorable terrain. Again, his eyes moved toward the back row. Iris was no longer looking at the footprint. She was looking at him. There was something strange in her expression. Not disagreement. Recognition. Core moved to the next image. A steep ravine split the terrain. The survey route was marked in white. A second line red crossed it. On the second day, we intended to pass through this canyon. He enlarged a photograph. Several trees had been pulled across the entrance. During the night, something blocked it. Cadets murmured. Deliberately, someone asked. We believed so. Vestal frowned. How would an animal know your route? We discussed that for years. Core let the question remain unanswered. Another image. A pile of stones. 3 stacked vertically. Those appeared twice. Another. A strip of bright material tied to a branch. And this. A fragment from our own emergency fabric. Removed from the crash site and placed nearly 2 kilometers away. The chamber had become very still. Core knew the effect. He had watched it happen every year. At first the students imagined animals. Then instinct. Then claws. Then something in the evidence began to feel too deliberate. That discomfort was the lesson. The most dangerous creature is not always the strongest, Core said. It may simply be the one that understands what you are going to do before you do it. Iris raised her hand. It was the first time. Core nodded. Cadet called her. The ration packets. Yes. You said they were stolen. They disappeared. That wasn't my question. Several cadets looked between them. Core's brow tightened. Go on. Were the unopened packets taken? He paused. No. Only the empty ones. Core studied her. Empty ration packaging, food residue, 2 waste sacks. What about the water containers? One was missing. Used. Yes. Iris nodded to herself. Core felt a small irritation. Is there a point? There might be. Then make it. She looked at the frozen picture of the blocked ravine. Did you ever find teeth marks on anything? Core's irritation cooled into curiosity. No. Claw damage? No. Blood? No. Scat. A few cadets laughed. Core ignored them. No. Hair? No. Skin? Nothing usable. Iris leaned back. So you had tracks? Yes. Heat signatures? Yes. Distant movement? Yes. Whistles? Yes. And things around camp changed. Core crossed his arms. That is a very selective summary of 4 days of evidence. But accurate. Yes. She nodded. Okay. Core waited. She said nothing else. Vestal twisted around in his seat to look at her. That is all. For now. Core returned to his lecture, though his attention no longer sat comfortably on his notes. He brought up the 3rd-day route. By this point, 2 expedition members were injured. One had a fractured wrist from the crash. Another had suffered a deep cut while crossing shale. The route passed between 2 ridges. The bipedal group became more active. 7 red markers appeared. 3 on our right, 2 behind us, 2 ahead. Boxing you in, Vess said. That was our interpretation. From the back, Iris spoke. Which side was the river on? Core turned. No hand this time. Excuse me. The river. She pointed at the map. Which side? Core glanced at the projection. East. So you're right. Yes. And those 3 stayed between you and the river. Core stared at the map. Mostly. He changed the time scale. The red points moved. 3 shadows tracked the expedition along the eastern side. They crossed ahead twice, then returned east. Core's eyes narrowed. Yes. Iris nodded. This time Core did not move on. How did you know there was a river there? She looked at him. The map shows a low cut. It shows elevation, not water. Water follows elevation. Not always. No, but usually enough. Core walked away from the table. Cadet called her. Have you studied the Morrow Reach archive? Some of it. Through what access? Public material. The public archive does not include that map. The room shifted. Iris's expression changed by almost nothing. Then I haven't seen that one. Core let the silence stretch. Yet you knew where the river was. I guessed. Vestal gave a quiet laugh. Iris looked at him. He stopped. Core continued the lecture, but the rhythm had changed. Each detail now felt as though it had 2 audiences. The class heard an old mystery. Iris Calder heard something else. He advanced to the final night. The lights dimmed further. This recording has never been released publicly. Iris sat straighter. Core noticed. Our expedition had reached a basalt shelf approximately 9 kilometers from the emergency beacon site. We believed rescue teams might detect us there. He started the audio. Wind. Breathing. The click of damaged equipment. Then far away, a deep sound rolled through the trees. Not a roar. Lower. A grinding, wet vibration that made several cadets visibly tense even through the old recording. Core stopped it. Morrow Reach researchers later identified this as a territorial call from a native raker. A rendering appeared. 6-legged. Broad-chested. Nearly 4 meters at the shoulder. Rows of sensory pits along the skull. The raker was real, Core said. We knew that before the crash. What we did not know was whether the bipedal pack and the raker were cooperating, competing, or simply occupying the same hunting area. He restarted the recording. The raker called again. Then the whistles answered. 2 short. 1 long. Iris closed her eyes. Core stopped the audio immediately. Every cadet looked toward her. She opened her eyes again. Core's voice dropped. You recognize it. Iris did not answer. That signal, Core said. You recognize it. She glanced around the chamber. Now the attention of 200 cadets was fixed on her. Yes. How? She looked back at him. It wasn't answering the raker. Core's jaw tightened. Then what was it doing? Calling a change. What change? Iris hesitated. Core stepped closer to the front row. That audio has never been published. I know. The signal pattern was omitted from every civilian summary. I know. So I will ask again. His voice was controlled, but the old knight had crept into it. How do you know what that whistle meant? Iris looked at the resin footprint on the table. Then at the grainy silhouette behind Core. When you heard it, she said, did the 2 shapes ahead of you move left? The chamber seemed to shrink. Core said nothing. Iris continued. One would have crossed the open stone first, the smaller one. Core felt cold move through him. The memory returned with impossible clarity. Moonlight. Black rock. A shape running low across the ridge. He had watched it through a cracked thermal scope. Yes. Iris swallowed. The smaller one slipped. No one moved. Core could hear the ventilation system. He had never put that detail in a report. Not because it mattered. Because no camera had captured it clearly enough to prove. I saw that, he said. I know. How? Iris looked straight at him. Because I was the one who slipped. No one understood at first. Core certainly didn't. He stared at her as though the sentence had arrived in a language he no longer spoke. Vestal slowly turned in his seat. What? Iris looked at the wall. At the old red outline drawn around the upright figure. Professor Core's unidentified predator. Designation 4. She pointed at it. That was me. The chamber erupted. Voices collided. Questions. Disbelief. Someone laughed once sharply, then stopped. Core remained motionless. Iris stood. I was one of the 7. Vestal looked from her to the footprint cast. You are saying your species was already on Morrow Reach. Obviously. No, Core said. The chamber fell silent again. He wasn't angry. He sounded wounded. Morrow Reach was catalogued before formal human contact. Yes. We found no settlements. You weren't near any. No human presence was reported by the planetary survey. Your survey covered less than 3% of the northern interior. Core stared at her. How old were you? 14. A few cadets made sounds of disbelief. Core shook his head. No. Iris did not react. You expect me to believe 7 human children stalked an alien survey team through a Deathworld wilderness for 4 days. They weren't children. You just said you were 14. I was the youngest. Then what were you? Search volunteers. Core gave one empty laugh. Searching for what? You. That silenced him. Iris walked down the steps toward the front. No one stopped her. She reached the center table and stood opposite Core. You crashed during migration season, she said. Your impact scared half the valley and started a slope fire. We saw smoke from the west lookout. Core's eyes flicked toward the projection. Iris pointed at the map. Our settlement was here. She touched a place beyond the displayed survey boundary. 32 kilometers away. Core looked at the location. His expedition maps marked the area as unverified forest. We sent 7 people because orbital debris was still falling, and nobody knew what had come down. 7. Yes. Armed. Of course. That produced another ripple through the class. Iris looked at them. There were rakers in the valley. Vestal leaned forward. So you really were hunting them? Iris looked at him. No. Then she looked at Core. We were trying to stop one from hunting you. Core's expression changed. Iris touched the route map. Your crash happened near a seasonal feeding corridor. The fire pushed one adult raker east. She moved her finger. Toward you. Core stared at the red markers, representing the supposed bipedal pack. No. The first tracks you found appeared after we found the raker's trail crossing yours. Core looked at the cast. Iris picked it up. It was heavy. She turned it in her hands. These aren't claws. They penetrated frozen ground. They're traction spikes. Core's mouth opened. Iris traced the front marks. 5-point mount, old design made for wet rock and ice. She tapped the heel. This narrow cut is from the rear stabilizer. Vestal said, then why do the prints change shape in different photographs? Because we changed footwear depending on terrain. Core pulled up another image. A wider track. 4 forward marks. Iris nodded. Ridge soles. Tomas would have been wearing those. Core's eyes snapped toward her. Tomas. One of our team. You remember which boot he wore 31 years ago. I remember him complaining about those boots for 31 years. Several cadets laughed nervously. Core did not. The supplies, Iris continued. We didn't steal food. You removed it. You left scented waste 50 meters from where you slept. Core froze. The raker was using smell. Mostly. Why not tell us? We tried. He looked at her. Iris pointed toward the image of stacked stones. You thought those were territorial markers. Core said nothing. They marked danger. The bright strip tied to a branch appeared again. And that route marker. The blocked canyon. Iris turned toward the map. Raker Den. Core stared. You pulled those trees across the entrance. Not by hand. A faint smile appeared. We had cable gear. Vestal looked stunned. You knew they would go into the canyon. Iris shrugged. They were exhausted, injured, heading toward the shortest line to open ground. Core looked again at the old route. We thought you were predicting us. We were. The answer landed harder than a denial would have. Iris continued. You were easy to predict. A few cadets smiled. Core almost did. Almost. The whistles. Spacing calls. Too short, one long. Shift left. Core remembered the final night. The shapes. 2 moving left. 3 staying east. 1 behind. 1 ahead. He pulled up the motion map again. Why did 3 of you remain between us and the river? Iris looked surprised. He needed to ask. Because the raker was on the other side. Core stopped breathing for a second. Vestal stood. Professor. Core ignored him. He advanced the timeline. The 7 red markers moved. Again. And again. Always adjusting. Always circling. Always remaining close. But now Core stopped looking at where they were relative to his expedition. He looked at where they were relative to the larger animal. A second set of markers had existed in the archive for decades. Raker sign. Footprints. Damaged vegetation. Heat traces. He had displayed them in separate layers because that was how the report had categorized them. He activated both. The projection changed. The raker's path appeared in yellow. Core felt the blood leave his face. Every time the yellow line approached the expedition route, red markers moved into its path. Every time the raker turned, the supposed pack changed formation. Core whispered, "You weren't surrounding us." Iris said nothing. "You were surrounding it." "Not exactly." He looked at her. "We were surrounding the space between you." For a moment Core could not speak. 31 years collapsed. The footsteps outside camp. The silhouettes. The whistles. The terror of waking to find tracks around them. The anger when supplies disappeared. The certainty that intelligent hunters were waiting for weakness. He remembered one terrible morning when his injured colleague could barely walk. The bipedal signs had doubled that day. Core had believed the creatures had smelled vulnerability. He looked at Iris. On the 3rd morning, she knew immediately. When Selvig hurt his ankle, Core's eyes widened. "You knew his name. We heard you calling it. You came closer." "Yes. We thought you had realized he was injured." "We had." Core's hands tightened on the edge of the table. "And the raker had too." No one in the chamber moved. Core looked back at the footage. "You stayed because of him. We stayed because of all of you." Vestal slowly sat again. Core's voice became quieter. "The final night." Iris's expression hardened slightly. "The shelf." The raker called. "Yes." "And your group changed position." "Yes." "You crossed the ridge." "Yes." "Why?" Iris looked at the projected map. "Because the extraction beacon started transmitting." Core blinked. "You heard it." "We intercepted part of the signal. We thought rescue was coming." "It was." "Then why didn't you leave?" "Because the raker was between you and the landing approach." Core stared at her. "What happened?" Iris took a breath. "We drew it south." The words were simple. They did not need decoration. Core looked again at the red markers. On the final map, the 7 contacts vanished one after another. For 31 years, researchers had interpreted that disappearance as the pack losing interest when alien rescue craft entered the atmosphere. Now Core understood. "You left us." "Yes." "To pull it away." "Yes." "How?" Iris gave him a look that made several cadets lean forward. Loudly. A few nervous laughs escaped. Core didn't smile. "You were 14. "Yes." "And you went with them." "Yes." "Why?" Iris frowned. Because I was there. That is not an answer. It was where I lived. Kor shook his head. Iris's voice softened. You keep asking why we were in the valley, as if the valley belonged to the dangerous things. She gestured at the projection. It belonged to us too. Kor lowered himself into the chair behind the table. He had never sat during this lecture before. Iris remained standing. For the first time, she seemed unsure what to do. Kor looked toward the footprint cast. Can you prove it? The question was not hostile. It sounded almost desperate. Iris nodded. Probably. Kor turned toward the archive controls. There is one piece of footage. He searched through old files. His hands moved too quickly at first. Then he slowed down. A recording appeared. Final night. Basalt shelf. The thermal image shook violently. A bipedal silhouette stood between two trees. Designation 4. Iris. The figure raised one arm. Bent it. Then pointed down the slope. Kor froze the image. For decades, he said, we classified that as a threat display. Iris stared at her younger self. No. What was it? Hold position. Kor advanced 3 seconds. Another figure appeared. Designation 2. It repeated the gesture. Then moved across the slope. Kor looked at Iris. And that. Confirmation. He played it again. Designation 4 raised an arm. Held. Pointed. Designation 2 answered. Then disappeared south. Kor zoomed out. In the far corner of the thermal image, almost invisible, a huge heat signature shifted behind the trees. The Raker. Designation 2 moved toward it. Away from the alien camp. Kor leaned closer to the screen. The class saw it at the same moment. A quiet sound moved through the chamber. Not fear this time. Understanding. Kor played the footage until it ended. Then again. On the third viewing, he stopped watching Iris's silhouette. He watched the Raker. Every movement changed. Everything made sense. He turned slowly toward the human cadet. You knew this footage existed. No. You remember making that signal. Iris smiled faintly. I remember falling 30 seconds earlier, and my uncle telling me I'd never hear the end of it. Kor looked at the grainy silhouette. For decades it had frightened people. Now it looked small. Young. Trying very hard not to be afraid. He shut down the projection. The chamber lights rose. No one spoke. Kor looked across the cadets. My original lecture question, he said, was how to identify an apex threat before it attacks. He looked toward Iris. I believe I have been teaching the wrong question. Iris raised an eyebrow. Kor looked at the footprint. The evidence was accurate. Yes. The tracks existed. Yes. The coordination existed. Yes. You predicted our movement. Yes. You surrounded us. Sometimes. You took material from our camp. Yes. You watched us while we slept. Iris grimaced. That sounds worse when you say it like that. A few cadets laughed. Even Kor did this time. Briefly. Then he became serious again. We saw the behavior. Yes. And assigned the motive. Iris nodded. That was the mistake. The lecture officially ended 12 minutes later. Almost nobody left. Cadets crowded around Iris with questions until Kor finally ordered them to give her space. Vestal remained near the front. He stared at the cast. I still don't understand something. Iris was gathering her notes. What? If your people knew those researchers were intelligent, why stay hidden? We didn't know what they were. You knew they had equipment. So does half the wildlife on some colony worlds after scavenging settlements. Vess looked offended. Iris smiled. And when we did realize they were intelligent, direct contact still wasn't smart. They were frightened, armed, injured, and being followed. We didn't know their language. If we walked into camp, somebody might shoot. Vess considered that. Would that have stopped you? No. He stared at her. That was a joke. I know. He wasn't entirely sure. The chamber eventually emptied. Core remained beside the table. Iris approached him. You okay? It was such an ordinary human question that Core almost laughed again. I spent half my career explaining that night. You weren't wrong about everything. That may be worse. Iris tilted her head. Why? Because if I had invented the evidence, I could simply discard it. He touched the footprint cast. But I saw what happened. Yes. I simply understood none of it. Iris leaned against the table. You understood what you had enough information to understand. That is a generous description. It isn't generosity. She looked at the blank wall. You were scared. Core's expression tightened. Yes. I would have been too. You were there. On the other side. That made you less afraid. Iris gave a short laugh. No. Core looked at her. That raker was huge. How close did it get? To us. To you. Iris's face lost its humor. Closer than we wanted. How close? She thought. Maybe 20 meters once. Core stared. And you were 14. You keep saying that. Because it continues to seem relevant. It seemed relevant to my mother, too. Core almost smiled. A voice came from the rear door. It seemed extremely relevant. Iris went still. Then turned. An older human man stood inside the chamber. Gray hair. Weathered face. A heavy travel coat hanging open over plain clothes. One hand rested on a battered bag. Iris stared at him. Uncle Tomas. The man looked toward Core. Professor. Core stood slowly. The human crossed the chamber. His gait was stiff on the left side. Old injury. He stopped at the table. For several seconds, the two men simply looked at each other. Core's mouth opened. Nothing came out. The human saved him. You were the skinny one with the blue field jacket. Core blinked. Yes. Kept arguing with the taller fellow. That was our expedition leader. He was an idiot. Iris covered her face. Tomas. What? Core surprised himself by laughing. A real laugh. Tomas smiled. You're welcome, by the way. Core's laughter stopped. He stared at the man who had once existed in his memory as a shape between trees. A thing he had feared. You were there. Unfortunately. You led them south. Most of us. You drew the raker away. Tomas shrugged. It liked noise. Core looked at the older human's left leg. That injury. Tomas followed his gaze. Same night. Core swallowed. You were hurt protecting us. Tomas considered the wording. Protecting everybody, preferably. He put his bag on the table. Iris said you still had the cast. Core glanced at her. She looked innocent. Tomas opened the bag. Inside was a boot. Old. Cracked. Heavy. Its sole carried 5 metal spikes near the front, and a narrow, stabilizing edge beneath the heel. Core stared at it. "I kept one," Tomas said. "No idea why." Iris folded her arms. "You keep everything. That is completely different." Core reached for the resin cast. His hands were steady now. He placed it beside the boot. The chamber was almost silent. 3 people. An old artifact. An older memory. Core turned the cast carefully, then lowered the boot into the impression. The front spikes settled into the 5 famous claw marks. The heel dropped into the narrow channel. Every edge aligned. Spike for spike. Cut for cut. The footprint of Morrow Reach's unidentified apex predator fit a human rescue boot perfectly.